Hi, my name is Joshua Campbell, and I am the Oklahoma State University Urban Agriculture and Natural Resources Extension Educator in Oklahoma County. I'm going to be sharing with you some tips on fall weed control and lawn care. Now, we'll specifically look at the fall season and ways to manage the lawn, and particularly ways to control weeds during the fall season. Some of the tips, though, that we will share will be applicable to lawn care in general. But you may find that you need more information specific to the spring or summer or other parts of the year. And so I encourage you to dig a little bit deeper after this presentation to some of the resources that I will share with you later on. As we jump in, first let's start by saying that maintaining a beautiful lawn is often a big priority for home landscapes, and there's nothing wrong with that. Having a nice lawn adds value to our homes. It makes our neighborhoods and our landscapes look attractive. But doing this can also be a very frustrating part of managing our home landscape. So I hope today that some of the tips that I share with you will make this process a little bit easier for you. And we're going to talk about lawn care and weed control. But in order to do that, it really helps to understand a few simple factors that play a role in the health and the overall appearance of your lawn. First off, lawn health and maintenance practices. So the health of your soil, the timing of mowing and things of that nature play a big role in the overall health outcome of your lawn. Understanding the weeds that you have, identifying those weeds allows you to properly control them and using the best methods and approaches for control, and also understanding the timing of when control needs to happen, all play into a successful lawn management program. Now, you also have to understand and define what your goals are. If your goal is maximum landscape appearance, then the approach you take when it comes to weed control and lawn care may go a different direction than if your approach is having the lowest maintenance lawn or saving as much money as possible. There's nothing wrong with any of these approaches, but determining your goal will really set the path that you end up taking. So clearly define the goal that you have, and that will allow you to make the right decisions about what management practices are going to be best for you. Here in Oklahoma, we have two turfgrass growth patterns that we experience. We're here in what's called the transition zone, and so we actually have both warm and cool season turf grasses that may be utilized in our landscapes. Cool season turf grasses are going to be things like tall fescue, predominantly used in shadier settings. And then warm season grasses would be things like Bermudagrass, Georgia grass, and buffalo grass, which are primarily used in full sun settings. And what you see here is that cool season grasses really have two distinct growing periods throughout the year. So the late winter, early spring, they start to grow, taking advantage of those mild spring conditions. They really significantly slow down in our summers and can even experience some dieback. And then they grow again in the fall as we cool down from the summer. Warm season grasses, on the other hand, only have one primary season of growth, and that is going to be spring, late spring through the summer, and they taper off into the early fall and end up going into dormancy. And so understanding the types of turf grasses that you're working with in your landscape is an important first step in any management that you're going to do. We have two excellent fact sheets on managing lawns, both a cool season lawn management calendar and then a Bermuda lawn management calendar, or you could also consider it just a general warm season lawn management calendar. And these can both be found at facts.okstate.edu. This web address is our fact sheet website and database, and you can actually search by topic. You can put in the actual name of a fact sheet, or you can search by keyword searches or by the individual fact sheet numbers, and they will all lead you to resources just like this that you can utilize. And so today, as we dive into this presentation, we'll be referring to both of these as a little closer as we think about the timing and the month-to-month fall management practices to control weeds and build a healthy lawn. So starting with warm season grasses, specifically Bermudagrass, we'll be looking at August through November, which I'm defining as kind of the fall lawn management period here in Oklahoma. And this calendar taken from this fact sheet actually gives us a month-by-month, 12-month of the year breakdown of the different management practices that could be going on. And then you look month to month and you see what the common or needed practices are. So in the month of August for warm season grasses, you're certainly going to be still doing some mowing. You could be doing your last fertilization of the year. Some ongoing watering in the form of irrigation may be needed if we don't have timely rainfall. And then you are going to be thinking about starting your fall pre-emergent and post-emergent weed control applications, and possibly even controlling of pests such as grubs in the lawn. So there's a lot of activities that could be going on in this August, this late summer, first part of fall time period. And this fact sheet breaks down all of those management activities. Specifically though, we're going to look in terms of warm season lawns at mowing, fertilization, irrigation, and weed control today. So mowing for warm season lawns may be necessary as late as the end of October or early November. It will really depend on our weather conditions. Warm season lawns will tend to go dormant as we get colder temperatures. And our historic first frost date here in Oklahoma, central Oklahoma at least, is around the 25th of October. And depending on the year, the Bermuda grass will tend to go dormant around that period or shortly after. So you may have ongoing mowing needs that go all the way into October. Fertilization, you want to think about the fertilization of warm season grasses as happening while they are actively growing. So you want to avoid any very late season application of fertilization on warm season grasses. So ideally, your fertilization programs will be completed by the end of August. Irrigation will again depend on weather conditions, and some irrigation may be needed all the way into September and early October, whether we get rainfall or not. Warm season grasses like Bermuda grass require about 1 inch of water, either in the form of precipitation or irrigation, to make it through our summer conditions. Once we get into September and October, we typically get cooler temperatures, we get more timely rainfall, and so this may drop back to 1/2 inch or no needed supplemental irrigation, depending on, again, our rainfall patterns. Weed control is going to be an important maintenance concern this time of year as we approach fall. And this will be true for both warm season and cool season lawns, as you'll see in just a little bit. Pre-emergent products and post-emergent products may be needed for weed control during the fall season. And we will talk specifically about what pre-emergent and post-emergent products are and how they're used. But in general, pre-emergent products are going to be used to prevent winter annuals from germinating. And they're going to be needed to be applied in August or early September, so they stay ahead of when those winter weeds begin to germinate. Post-emergent products will be applied later because they're going to be applied on existing weeds. And so typically winter weeds germinate in mid-September. And so you wouldn't need to do post-emergent applications to spot treat any weeds that made it through that pre-emergent barrier, probably until the beginning part of October. Okay, moving into cool season lawn management now. And you can see that this calendar that I refer to coming from our fact sheet shows you the management practices that may be needed during the fall season. Those look like establishing and overseeding, fertilization, irrigation, weed control, and then renovation and improvements. So there's a few extra management considerations for cool season lawns that we experience here in the fall. The fall is an ideal time for establishing new cool season grasses, either from seed or from sod. Mid-September through mid-October is going to be the ideal time to establish cool season lawns. And the reason for that is because soil temperatures are ideal for germinating those seeds. The growing conditions are right. In addition, you're going to have ongoing fertilization needs because the active growth is happening for those cool season grasses. And so fertilization applications can begin starting in late September, and you can do a fertilization application in November as well. It's always recommended to do fertilization applications based on soil tests, if at all possible. That gives you a roadmap for how much fertilizer product to put down, what products to use. And so that's very important to do that every so often. Typically on cool season lawns, you're going to have between 3 and 4 applications of fertilizer spread out over the course of the growing season. And so for cool season lawns, remember their peak growing periods are spring and fall. And so you'll be thinking about March, April, and then maybe September, October, or October, November as those 3 to 4 application time slots. If we think about irrigation needs, cool season grasses need as much as double the amount of water ongoing as warm season grasses. So whereas Bermudagrass needed 1 inch per week, tall fescue and other cool season grasses are going to need more like 2 inches per week. And especially in the late summer, so August and early September, as we still often face very warm conditions and it can be quite dry, that irrigation is going to be important. You're going to need more ongoing irrigation to establish a new sod and seed, and so you need to think about that. As we cool down and we move into the later fall and winter months, the irrigation needs of tall fescue are going to drop by about half, and it may need only as much as 1 inch or less of water per week to maintain it through the late fall and winter months. Weed control is going to be especially important on cool season grasses at this time of year, both pre-emergent and post-emergent applications. And you can think about weed control very similarly on cool season grasses as you do to warm season grasses. The main consideration in terms of what would be different is that the timing of application may be different based on what you're doing with your cool season lawn. For instance, if you've recently seeded, then any pre-emergent application that you put down is going to have the possibility of inhibiting and preventing those cool season grass seeds from germinating, just like it would weeds. And so you typically delay any pre-emergent weed control application in the fall on cool season grasses until after you've gotten a good stand establishment, good germination and stand establishment of the grass that you've seeded. If you're starting from sod, then you could go with a pre-emergent application as planned. The other thing to consider is if you're using a non-selective herbicide, sometimes you'll see people do this on dormant warm season grasses. because those non-selective herbicides won't harm a grass that is not actively growing. However, cool season grasses are going to be actively growing during the cool weather. And so any non-selective herbicide products can potentially harm or kill your cool season grasses if applied. Thinking a little bit more deeply about how we maintain a healthy lawn, again, going back to those maintenance practices that we mentioned earlier, many lawn problems, including weed infestations, are generally the result of poor management practices. So as we beef up our management practices, if we get a little bit more intentional with how we manage, doing things like building a healthy soil, following good management mowing practices, and then honing in our irrigation and fertilization schedules, we can really get ahead of weeds in the lawn. A healthy soil is going to improve the soil's ability to hold water and nutrients. As we follow good mowing practices, we make the lawns more competitive against weeds. We don't stress out the turf grass as much. And then when we practice good irrigation and fertilization schedules, again, we promote optimum growth for the turf grasses while minimizing optimum growth for weed seeds. The other important thing is identification of weeds is going to be the first step in trying to control them. So if we don't know the type of weeds that we have, or at least the general category of weed that they are, then it's going to be very hard to control them. When we think about weeds, there are a number of considerations, but you can generally break them down into groups. There are weeds that are called broadleaf weeds. Broadleaf weeds are what we call dicot. And dicot plants have two leaves that emerge from a single seed, as you can see here in the bottom left. In addition, as those dicot or broadleaf weeds mature, they generally have wider leaf shapes, and that's where they get the name broadleaf. But they also tend to have a web-like veination or vein pattern on the leaves themselves. Whereas grassy weeds, which are called monocots, and they emerge from a single leaf type of growth habit, they have long straight leaves and more of an up and down veination pattern. And so when we know whether a weed is a broadleaf weed or a grassy weed, that helps us determine how we control it, because the products that we use and the timing of control may be different for broadleaf weeds versus grassy weeds. Getting a little bit more focused in even, we have to understand, once we know whether it's a broadleaf weed or a grassy weed, whether it's annual, biennial, perennial, and also the season of growth that it grows in. So an annual weed is going to be a weed that has a 1-year life cycle. That's going to be a plant that emerges from a seed, grows into a plant, and then it produces seed and then dies back. And any new weeds are going to come from whatever seeds that plant put on that during its life cycle. A biennial plant is one that takes 2 seasons to complete its growth cycle. And so it'll start out as a vegetative plant the first year. And then in the second year, it will produce seeds, die back, and new plants will emerge from those seeds. Whereas a perennial plant is one that continues to grow year after year from the vegetative material that's left behind, what we would call the crown of a plant, which is the part that emerges just past the root system above the soil. And that's where energy is stored so that plant can come back year after year from that same plant material. And then the season in which a plant or a weed emerges tells us about how to control it. If it's going to be germinating in the early fall and late fall, early winter, then the timing of when we put down pre-emergence to control that is determined by when it germinates. To elaborate on that a little bit more, this image gives you a good picture of what I'm describing. So winter annual weeds emerge when weather conditions are right. Sometime in mid-September is when they start germinating, and they actively grow all the way through the year and mature sometime in the spring, and then start to taper off at the end of the summer. And oftentimes we start to worry about these weeds in February, March, April, and May when they're already mature. And there's a lot less control that we can have over these weeds when they're in this mature state. Whereas if we think about trying to control them in a pre-emergent fashion before they even emerge, say in August and early September, we can gain much, much better control. These are some examples of some of the common winter annual broadleaf weeds that you might encounter in an Oklahoma lawn and landscape. This is certainly not an exhaustive list of the weeds that you encounter, but I just wanted to give you some visual examples of some of the weeds that we encounter. Things like kinbit, which is classic example of one that we get a lot of complaints about in the spring, but if people had properly used a fall pre-emergent application, they can gain control of henbit before it becomes a unsightly problem in the spring. These are some common winter perennial broadleaf weeds. And again, not a full list, but just some of the ones that you might experience. So these have the potential to come back year after year from the same plant. And so what you'll find is often that these have tap roots or a very deep rooted base. And if you are not chemically controlling them and you just come and you mow or you are hand pulling, any vegetative part that is left behind has the potential to allow that plant to reemerge. Here are some of the common winter annual grassy weeds. And remember the difference between broadleaf weeds and grassy weeds. Grassy weeds look just like that. They look like grasses. And some of the common ones that we experience here in Oklahoma are annual bluegrass, little barley, and downy brome, or sometimes called cheatgrass. Here are some of the cool season perennial broadleaf weeds. So these are some other ones. We mentioned dandelion and clover. But these are some of the other ones: curly-top, poppy plantain, buckhorn plantain, all some of the ones that you might experience in an Oklahoma lawn. While the timing of treatment for the summer annual grassy weeds is going to be in the spring, I went ahead and put this slide in here because I wanted to make you aware that there are different times of the year when we control different grassy weeds or broadleaf weeds. And that's why it is important to think and to pay attention to that calendar, that 12-month calendar fact sheet that I referred to earlier. For instance, crabgrass is going to be best controlled with a pre-emergent treatment that happens in February or March because it germinates in the late spring or early spring, late winter. Same with goosegrass. Also, these are two common warm season perennial grassy weeds. Dallas grass is a constant problem in many lawns. And then in a lot of areas, especially more rural areas, larger former pasture areas, sandburrs can be a problem. And so I briefly wanted to highlight, even though the fall is not the best time to control these, I wanted to highlight and give you some information about this so that you could do some further investigation. Specifically talking about sandburrs, the most common sandbur, although there are a number of different sandburs that occur throughout Oklahoma, the most common is the field sandbur. And it is a perennial, so it's going to form new plants from seed, but it can also come back year over year from the plant itself. Control for consumers or homeowners is really the best approach is the maintenance practices that you do. So practicing good soil fertility, proper irrigation. On a small scale, by far the best approach to control these is to physically dig them out. Take a shovel, get as much of the plant and those seeds as possible out of the lawn and dispose of them. That is going to be by far the most effective way. There are some chemical treatments that can be done, both pre and post-emergent chemical treatments that can get expensive and usually requires repeat applications because those seeds that make it into the soil are viable for many, many years. And chemical controls don't effectively eliminate those seeds. They can eliminate the plant, but they don't always eliminate those seeds. And so if you don't eliminate the plant before it produces seed, then those seeds are viable. Any seeds that exist in the soil are viable. And so that's why a good combination of soil health, physical control, and then when it's needed, pre and post-emergent weed control applications can help you stay on top of this. Now, as we talk about fall lawn care and specifically weed control, it's important again to put some more emphasis on non-chemical methods. The first instinct for many homeowners as they manage their lawns is to think, what chemical product can I use? And to be honest, that's not the best approach. Thinking about what we call cultural practices or maintenance practices, such as adjusting your mowing height, allowing lawn clippings to remain on the grass to break down and incorporate into the soil, and then timing and frequency of mowing. Those are some of the factors, like I mentioned earlier, that play a significant part in the overall health and appearance and ability of your lawn to outcompete weeds. Raising the mowing height. Of course, the mowing height is going to be different depending on the turf species in question. But in general, as you raise the mowing height, you allow that turf grass to put more cover over the soil, which is going to reduce the ability of weed seeds to germinate. It's also going to allow for a healthier, stronger turf plant. And as you mulch mow, those clippings break down and provide organic material to the soil. Over time, that improves the soil's condition. It's going to make it be able to hold water longer and more of it. It's going to allow nutrients and oxygen to cycle through the soil and be available to the plant more readily. Mowing frequency is important. Most grass plants, their core of their growth energy is coming out at the base of the ground, right at that plant, which we call the crown. However, there are a lot of weeds that growth point is a little higher up. And so the more frequently that we mow, sometimes that allows us to gain control or eliminate certain types of weeds just by frequent mowing. Hand pulling is going to be by far the most effective weed control method available to anyone. It is, if you can get that plant, and especially if you can get as much of the root system as possible, you're going to be able to get very, very good control. However, it's labor intensive and it's not always practical. It requires physical ability that we don't all have. And so as a result, it's not always the preferred method, but it is by far the most effective. Proper fertilization is another option. When we think about timing and availability of nutrients, a well-fertilized lawn is going to be stronger, more able to outcompete weeds. And when we ensure that plants have proper nutrients, we are giving them the most competitive edge possible for outcompeting weeds. But it should always be based on a soil test. Soil test is your road map for any fertilization program. Also, proper irrigation. The general thought process or default understanding of irrigation is, okay, if I water more frequently, then there's going to be more water available to my plants. My grass will be happier. And actually, the best method from a lawn management perspective is to try to water as deeply and infrequently as possible. And so fewer irrigation cycles are going to promote a stronger turfgrass root system. As that water moves deeper into the soil, those roots are forced to extend deeper into the soil to access that moisture. And as a result, it creates deeper rooted, stronger rooted turfgrass plants. Also, if you're watering frequently, you're never allowing that top inch or two of soil to dry back. And as a result, you have a constant moist seed bed that allows any of those weed seeds that are there in that top shallow 1 to 2 inches of soil to have a very prime opportunity for germinating. Again, more details are available in our fact sheets than can be covered today. I encourage you to go to our facts.okstate.edu website and check out some of the fact sheets that are available. And these are just 2 examples: consumer broadleaf weed control for lawns in Oklahoma and controlling weeds in home lawns. We're going to give you far more detailed information about how to go about some of the things that we've talked about in today's presentation. Moving forward, we're going to talk about some of the chemical control methods for controlling weeds. As I stated earlier, this should not be the first method or approach taken in managing a lawn. It should be done in conjunction and after the other maintenance practices are implemented: healthy soil, proper fertilization, proper mowing heights, proper irrigation. All of those things should be considered before we think about chemical control methods for weeds. Once we're at the point of chemical control, we need to remember that there are pre-emergent and post-emergent methods for controlling weeds. Pre-emergent weed control is thinking about controlling weeds before they germinate. It will not control actively growing weeds. And so pre-emergent products are put down on the soil surface before weed seeds germinate. And as they are watered into the soil, they create a temporary chemical barrier that prevents seeds from germinating. Post-emergent control is controlling weeds that are already existing. We can physically see them in the lawn. And post-emergent control comes in 2 forms. There's selective and non-selective. What I mean by that is selective chemical post-emergent controls control specific types of weeds. For instance, there are broadleaf post-emergent chemicals that will control the broadleaf weeds in the lawn without hurting your turfgrass. And then there are non-selective herbicide treatments that will kill the weeds as well as your turfgrass. And non-selective herbicides are used when you want to totally clear out vegetation in an area, or in some settings, which we'll talk about in just a little bit, they are used on dormant turf grasses for spot treatment of weeds. Non-selective herbicides are what we call systemic, in that they require an actively growing plant in order to be taken into that plant and to cause it to die. And so when turf grasses are fully dormant, they are not susceptible to the damage, but the weeds that are actively growing within that dormant turf grass can be eliminated that way. So when we think about fall pre-emergent treatment, remember, it inhibits germination for a period of time. And so in order to stay ahead of the weeds that may be growing, we have to think about timing application in advance of when those weeds germinate, but not so far in advance that we don't get effective control. Typically here in Oklahoma, starting around the third week of August, going into early or mid-September is when you want to have your fall pre-emergent applications put down. But remember, if you're going to be overseeding your tall fescue to help renovate it, thicken it back up, make it look healthy again, then do not apply a fall pre-emergent application in those areas. For the most part, fall pre-emergent applications, if properly applied based on the labeled recommendations, can give you between 80 to 90% control of weeds. You're not going to get 100% control no matter how good you are. And so what happens is you'll get a few weeds that make it through and that end up becoming what we would call a weed that needs to be controlled in a post-emergent method. The pre-emergent treatments have a window of effectiveness that can be anywhere from 40 or 50 days up to 90 or 100 days. The product that you use will give you general time frame that it is effective, but ultimately it's dependent upon weather. And the reason for that is that it is required to be actively in the soil root zone where those seeds are going to be germinating and establishing roots. And so if we get heavy rains in the spring, which we often do, that can wash away that pre-emergent herbicide either off the site or deeper into the soil, which makes it less effective and shortens the window of time that pre-emergent weed control is effective. Fall post-emergent applications, again, are going to be used on emerged weeds. And you'll commonly hear as a select products for broadleaf weed control, you'll hear 2,4-D, which is the main chemical ingredient. However, most 2,4-D based products are going to be mixed with like dicamba and other ingredients to form an effective selective control product for broadleaf weeds. Glyphosate is the most common non-selective herbicide, and there are a number of formulations and brand names, but the most recognizable brand name is for glyphosate is Roundup, and it is used for total weed control. And the best use of that, if it's going to be used, is for spot treatment of individual weeds within dormant lawns. If you apply either post-emergent products, the best time to apply is going to be on smaller emerged weeds. So the smaller the weeds, the more effective the control will be and the less product that you're going to have to use. And again, you want spot treatment. You don't want to just spray the product over the whole yard if you can help it. You want to scout the yard and go and apply it on individual weeds that have emerged in the yard. For pre-emergent products, there are different pre-emergent products that you would use for grassy weeds versus broadleaf weeds. The grassy weeds, you would use products that contain active ingredients such as orzolan, prodiamine, pendimethalin, diplopyr. There are others, but those are some of the most common active ingredients. For broadleaf weeds, you're going to want to find products that contain isoxaben. To get more information on this, again, refer to the fact sheets that we mentioned at the beginning, the cool season lawn management and the Bermudagrass lawn management calendars. You can go to our fact sheet website and type in L-442 or L-441 to locate those. For post-emergent control, again, you have products that are containing mixes of 2,4-D and dicamba, and those are used for broadleaf weed control and turf grasses. Some of the brand names that you might encounter would be Weed Be Gone, Trimec. October through the month of November is probably going to be the time that you're going to have to apply post-emergent broadleaf herbicides if you have weeds that come up in the yard and make it through any pre-emergent application. Again, post-emergent applications are not the most effective way to control weeds, and we often default to controlling weeds once we see them. However, a properly timed pre-emergent application is going to be by far the most effective way to control weeds in a lawn. And remember, non-selective herbicides can be applied carefully on dormant warm season turf only. So don't apply non-selective products to cool season grasses, and don't apply them too early or too late on warm season grasses when there's still some green vegetation there. So make sure you read labels, pay attention, and use care and caution when using herbicide products. If you're following the calendars that we have provided, the information from the cool season and Bermudagrass lawn management calendars, then a typical lawn treatment schedule might look something like this. This would be, maybe you have a mix of cool and warm season grasses, but it would look something like the last week of August into mid-September, you're applying pre-emergent products for winter annual weed control. In October and into November, you can scout your yard. If you see some emerged weeds that made it through that pre-emergent, then you can use a broadleaf herbicide to control those weeds. Then again, in February to mid-March, you're using another pre-emergent application, which is going to help you control the spring and summer annual weeds. If we have a bunch of emerged weeds that are still around, you can do a dormant application of a non-selective herbicide to help control those winter annuals in the Bermudagrass before it greens up in the spring. You can do a second application of pre-emergent herbicide in May if needed. Sometimes we get heavy spring rains that shorten the window of effectiveness for those pre-emergents that we put down in the early spring. And so a second application is required to get pre-emergent control through the summer to control a lot of the summer annual weeds. You can do May through June spot treatment of emerged weeds using post-emergent herbicides, and as well as crabgrass. However, as we get into July and August, it's generally too late to try to get post-emergent control on weeds. The reason for that is those weeds are at their peak of growth. They are established, they have strong root systems, and so any herbicides that we use are going to be minimally effective and are going to run the risk of drifting and causing injury to turfgrass, ornamental plants around the yard, and things like vegetable gardens. If we have raised bed vegetable gardens around, there's a high risk of injury. And so the best practice is to delay any July and August weed control and pick back up with this plan as we've described it. Now, we just highlighted the more conventional approach, the traditional approach to fall lawn care and weed control. However, there's a growing desire to control lawns in a lower impact, environmentally impacted way. And you might call this an organic or natural approach. And so I briefly will highlight some of the steps that we need to be taken if your goal was to use a more natural and organic approach to lawn care. An organic lawn care program, when I use that term, I'm referring to a lawn care program that is managing lawn without synthetic fertilizers or pesticides. It does not mean that you're not continuing to do basic lawn care maintenance. So an organic lawn care program is actually going to depend more heavily on sound maintenance schedules and programs. You're going to really have to focus on the things that we've talked about: proper mowing, proper irrigation, fertilization, and soil health. Of course, using organic products that are available. And then weed control, again, as a last option. Some of the organic weed control practices. So again, there's limited scientific research that has been done on exclusively natural and organic lawn care programs. However, there's a lot of well-documented research that has been done on the management practices that play an integral part in making a healthy, natural, organic lawn care program work. And those are things like poor aeration, following proper mowing. Seasonally, every year to 2 years, you can, after aeration, top dress the turf grass with compost. And practices like this will go a long way at improving the overall health of your soil and your lawn, so that lower maintenance, lower input, less, more organic and less conventional approaches can yield quality results. So an organic weed control and lawn maintenance program might look like mowing at 2.5 to 3 inches. Again, this will establish a dense turf, discourage weed growth and seed germination. And frequent mowing can reduce seed production for most weed plants. And so, again, timing and frequency of mowing plays a big role. Frequent and shallow irrigation will discourage deep root growth for our turf grass. And it's going to allow those moisture seed beds for weed seeds to germinate. And so following proper irrigation practices, irrigating as deeply as possible in that soil profile and root zone, but less frequently, is going to be a needed approach. And then there are a number of organic-based herbicides and fertilizers that are out there and can be used in a lawn management program. Some of the weed control products that are used for organic management are, from a selective weed control standpoint, there are some new organic herbicides that are available for lawn use, and a lot of them are using chelated iron as their active ingredient. There are a number of products out there. One, just to mention in this presentation, is called Fiesta, and it is said that these products can provide some control of broadleaf weeds in the lawn. There's some other products such as Adios, ADIOS, which is mainly an active ingredient using salts to provide broadleaf weed control. Some of the non-selective products are going to be herbicidal soaps. And again, these non-selective products can effectively kill quite a few weeds, but they may also harm your turf grass. And they are typically a fatty acid-based product. And what they do is they coat the leaves, and it doesn't allow that leaf to take in water, nutrients to properly perform photosynthesis, which allows it to have energy to draw up nutrients. And so it eventually leads to death of that plant. And what I understand about these products is that they can be effective at controlling a wide variety of annual weeds, but they're not very effective at all on perennial weeds. And that is because they don't have any ability to affect the root system and underground energy stores of perennial plants. Pre-emergent controls. The most common organic approach to pre-emergent weed control is using corn gluten. And corn gluten is a byproduct of the corn syrup manufacturing industry. So as corn syrup is produced, the byproduct or the waste product of that is this corn gluten. And the proteins in corn gluten can inhibit the germination and root growth of seeds. And so it is used in organic lawn management programs as a pre-emergent control product. Beyond weed control products, there are a number of other ways that I would call physical management to control weeds. And so one of those would be flame weeding. You can see here in this picture at the bottom left, this propane tank attached to a flame torch can be used to effectively burn and using fire control weeds. Solarization is another method, and it would be used for larger areas. For instance, in this picture here, if you were to want to eliminate this Bermudagrass in an area to prepare it as a bed for planting ornamental trees and shrubs, flowers, or perhaps you were trying to get it ready for a vegetable garden, then solarization is an effective way, although it takes some time, and some types of solarization processes are more effective than others. It is an effective way of controlling weeds and turfgrass within a landscape in order to prepare it for other types of planting. We have a great video on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel that if you're interested in solarization of Bermudagrass, I encourage you to check out. Go to YouTube and search for the Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel, and it is available there. Ultimately, soil health is going to be the key focus and the key priority for any organic lawn care and maintenance program. So one of the things to consider would be top dressing with compost. At least every couple of years, compost. As you surface apply compost to established lawns, that is referred to as top dressing. And what compost does is it supplies nutrients. And so some people confuse it as a fertilizer, but it is not a fertilizer in and of itself. Compost is what I would call a soil amendment or a soil conditioning product, in that it provides a small amount of nutrients, but it's primarily applied to add organic matter to the soil. As you add organic matter, you're improving the overall health and the qualities of the soil. You're making the soil more able to hold on to moisture for longer periods of time. So your plants have less stress in periods of drought. Your soil is more able to hold on to nutrients and to cycle nutrients to the plants, make it available to the roots of the plants. And so it's more of an amendment to improve the overall quality of the soil. If you're going to experiment with compost top dressing on your lawn, the best time to do that would be in the fall or the spring. And it could be done in conjunction with any aeration that you're going to do. As you aerate, you're improving the compaction. So you're removing some of the compacted soil, adding more voids and air space into the soil, which is very important for optimum root growth. And then you can rake that compost into those voids, and that incorporates that compost into the soil of your lawn, making it available to start to improve the soil quality. We covered a lot of material in a short time today. And unfortunately, there's never enough time to cover everything that you would want to cover. The nice thing is we have a wealth of resources that are freely available to you as a citizen of the state of Oklahoma. You can go to our website. Again, this is facts.okstate.edu. I've referred to it several times throughout this presentation. When you arrive at the site, you'll land on a page that looks like this. And this is our extension service website. You can navigate to this search bar. And when you click on the search bar, it will take you to something that looks like this. And you can type in keywords that you're interested in. So I typed in here turfgrass weeds and hit search, and a number of search results came up. These are all internal publications that we call fact sheets with information on specific topics, specifically relevant to Oklahoma, based in research and science. So you know the information that you're getting is relevant to you as somebody who lives in central Oklahoma. You can click on an individual link and it'll take you to a web page. You can scroll through and read the information, or if you wanted to jump to a specific heading, such as summer annual weeds or winter annual weeds, you can click on this hyperlinked area and it would take you to that. If you decide that you wanted to print this, if you prefer reading a physical copy, or if you wanted a PDF version to be able to interact with, you can click on that, print a PDF, and it brings you to the PDF versions of these fact sheets that would look something like this. And again, these are available at facts.okstate.edu. I really encourage you to go visit these fact sheets, to spend some time learning more about the topics that we've discussed today and other topics that may be interesting to you. We also have an Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. This is a channel that essentially gives you video versions of a lot of our popular fact sheets. I went to the Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel, and then there's a search bar here on the right-hand side. I typed in lawn weed control, and you can see that a bunch of different search results popped up. We have thousands and thousands of videos that cover all sorts of landscaping, gardening topics. And so, again, I encourage you to go and to research topics of your interest on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel and find some things that will be helpful to you. Lastly, you can stay connected with us here in Oklahoma County. We have a statewide extension service that is Oklahoma State University Extension. However, we are hyper-local. We have offices in every one of Oklahoma's 77 counties with information, resources, classes like this that are specific to the people of that area. And so if you'd like to stay connected with us here in Oklahoma County and learn more about the things that we're doing, the programs that we have to offer for you, you can use your phone right now and you can pull up your camera and put your camera on these QR codes. And you can visit our Oklahoma County YouTube channel with information specific to what we're doing here in Oklahoma. We also have a Facebook page, Twitter, and an Instagram. So I encourage you to stay in touch and to utilize the local resources that you have. That's all that I have today for this presentation. Again, my name is Joshua Campbell, and I appreciate you taking the time to learn about fall weed control and lawn management with me. You can reach out to me. I am stationed here in Oklahoma County at our Oklahoma County Extension Office, located on Northeast 63rd Street in Oklahoma City. You can call us anytime, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. at the number there listed below, or you can visit our Oklahoma County Extension Office website to learn more and to connect with us if you have questions.